The wind whispered over the barren cliffs of Aurelia Prime, carrying with it the metallic tang of ozone and the hum of distant engines. Above the horizon, the Sovereign's raft loomed like a dark omen, its glowing thrusters slicing the night with silent fire. Below, 9 figures stood on the jagged precipice, their silhouettes sharp against the planet's pale glow. They were the last of the Concord High Circle, leaders, warriors, traders, and oracles, assembled for a reckoning. Commander Lyravos kept her hands folded behind her back, spine straight despite the fatigue weighing her bones. The others murmured among themselves, but her focus was on the ship. Her ship, once a symbol of unbreakable alliance, now returned without warning, manned by ghosts and bearing the call sign of a man long thought dead. "I saw him," whispered Kelrin, the youngest among them, his voice trembling. He walked the central deck like nothing had changed, like the war never ended. Lyra turned slowly. "That's impossible." "You buried him," murmured Priestess Thale. Her robes fluttered in the breeze, eyes hidden behind a visor etched with constellations. "We all watched. The ground took him. The ground still remembers." The air shifted, heavy with memory and suspicion. Lyra's jaw tightened. 5 years ago, Admiral Ryan Dane, her closest ally and the architect of the Concord's last stand, was declared dead after the siege of Ember Reach. She had led the funeral, lit the pyre herself, and yet the ship now idling above their heads bore his genetic command code. "Maybe it's not him," said Counselor Vran, eyes narrowed. "Maybe it's someone wearing his face. Or worse," Thel added, "his mind." The words chilled Lyra more than the planetary winds. She stepped closer to the edge, watching the shadows drift across the ship's hull. Every instinct warned her that this was no coincidence. Dane wouldn't have returned without purpose, and if he had been remade or coerced into serving another, their cause was already in jeopardy. "Can we board it?" asked Kelrin. "Try to reason with him?" "We don't reason with ghosts," Vren snapped. "We contain them, dissect them if we must." "He's not a ghost," Lyra said, her voice firm. "Not yet." They fell silent. The ship descended a fraction, low enough to cause the ground to rumble beneath their feet. A shaft of light beamed from its underbelly, forming a circular platform mere meters away. An invitation. Thale tilted her head. "He wants us aboard." Lyra nodded once. "And we will go. All of us. If Dane is alive, I'll know. If he's something else," she trailed off. No one needed her to finish the sentence. The high circle moved as one, stepping into the light. The world dissolved in a surge of energy, and when it reformed, they stood within the ship's atrium, a place Lyra knew like the veins on her palm. Yet something was wrong. The air was too still, the walls too quiet. No crew, no noise, just the deep hum of a system that shouldn't be functioning. Then a voice echoed, low and measured. "You came." Lyra turned. There he was. Ryan Dane stood on the far side of the atrium, clad in dark command robes stitched with gold. His face was unchanged, still lean, still marked by the small scar beneath his left eye, but his gaze had lost something, or perhaps gained something foreign. "You died," she said. "I was taken," he replied, stepping forward. "Pulled through the rift, reforged in the black beyond your stars." Thale drew in a sharp breath. "The rift is forbidden." "It was," Ryan agreed, smiling faintly. "But now it's open, and it's coming." Lyra's fingers inched toward the blade at her side. "What did you bring with you?" He stopped a meter away, eyes sweeping across the others. "Truth, and a choice." A mechanical hiss split the air as panels slid open in the chamber walls. Organic pods, pulsing with strange blue light, lined the interior. Inside each, a copy, no, a reflection of the high circle. Cloned? Simulated? Something more obscure? Kelrin stumbled back. "What is this?" "Options," Ryan said. "You've each been duplicated, memory, thought, instinct. These versions were tested in futures you never lived. Some triumphed. Most fell. I offer the best of you, to replace you." Vren snarled. "Replace us?" "You've grown soft," Ryan said. "Divided. You would not survive what's coming. But they might. The words hit like a blade. Then why bring us here? Lyra demanded. Why not kill us and be done with it? Because, Ryan said, I remember who I was, and part of him still believes you might choose to become what you need to be. And if we don't, Thale asked. The lights dimmed. The ship groaned as if stirred by something ancient and restless. Then, he said, I'll let the better versions of you decide. The floor beneath them began to shift. The air grew heavy, like the breath of some colossal beast waiting in the dark. Lyra stared at the man she once called brother and saw no victory in his eyes, only warning. And in that moment, she realized the war they feared had already begun. The silence that followed was sharper than any blade. Lyra felt it press into her skin, hollowing the space between each breath. The others stood frozen, their eyes flicking from Ryan to the replicas. From a man they once trusted to monstrosity he now commanded. No one spoke. No one moved. You said this was a choice, Lyra said, stepping forward. Her voice echoed slightly in the hollow chamber, the kind of acoustics designed for ceremony or judgment. Then speak plainly. Were you offering, Ryan? He studied her as one might study a fracture in the hull, quietly, with the weight of too many calculations behind his gaze. The galaxy is not what you think it is. You fight to preserve a world already lost. The Concord is broken. Its ideals burned away in systems no longer loyal to the cause. But I have seen another path. Beyond the rift lies an order untouched by weakness. We can rebuild, but not as we were. You mean to replace us, Vren said, voice like gravel, called by its name. I mean to say what remains, Ryan replied. The copies aren't bound by your memories. They aren't haunted. They are refined, sharpened, ready. Kelrin took a step toward one of the pods. He stared into the translucent shell where his own likeness floated, suspended in biostasis. It looked peaceful, serene, even. Is it conscious? Not yet, Ryan said. They await activation. But the longer we delay, the less time we have. What is coming? Thale asked. Her fingers traced a pattern in the air, an old warding gesture, one rarely used outside death rites. Ryan's smile faded. A fracture, not of space, but of will. Something followed me back through the rift. It does not speak in words. It speaks in desires. It offers power in exchange for surrender. And many will say yes. The chamber lights flickered. For a second, the replicas inside the pod seemed to twitch, or perhaps it was a trick of the pulse lighting. Lyra's hand dropped to her weapon, but she didn't draw it. Not yet. You said we wouldn't survive, she said. That the better versions of us might. What makes you so sure? I watched 1,000 simulations, Ryan said. In only 3 did you win. In 2, you survived but lost yourselves. And in 1, he hesitated, you sacrificed everything. Then why not just make more of us? Vren asked bitterly. Toss the dice again. Because, Ryan said, those paths began with a decision. Right now. Here, choose to become what you must, or be replaced. A low tone vibrated through the deck plating. The pods began to stir, lights inside flickering in response to some unseen signal. The air tightened, charged with tension like the seconds before a storm's first strike. Lyra turned to her counsel. We don't know if these things are safe, or if they're even us. Ryan's judgment isn't what it used to be. I'm standing right here, he said. No, she said softly. You're standing where he used to be. Thale nodded slowly. There is no prophecy for this. No precedent. Only intuition. Then follow it, Lyra said. One way or another, we end this now. Kelrin looked at his pod again. His eyes shimmered, uncertain. And what if they're better? What if we're what's holding everything back? Lyra approached him. Being better doesn't come from being made perfect. It comes from choosing to act, despite fear, despite failure. He held her gaze, and for a moment, he was no longer the frightened apprentice, but something more, someone nearly ready. The lights above flickered again. Ryan spoke, and this time, there was something strained in his voice. They're waking. You've waited too long. The first pod cracked open with a hiss. The replica of Counselor Vren stepped out, its gaze sweeping the room with cold efficiency. Then another pod opened, and another. Vren drew his sidearm. I don't intend to meet my replacement. But the replica of Vren didn't attack. Instead, it looked at the original, eyes narrow with calculated judgment. You fear being obsolete. That alone disqualifies you. Lyra raised a hand. Stop. All of you. Ryan's expression tensed. You're out of time, Lyra. Choose. She looked at her people, her real people. Thale's faith, Kelren's uncertainty, Vren's defiance. They weren't weaknesses. They were what made them real, what made them alive. I choose to fight, she said. With them. She turned toward the replicas. Deactivate them. Ryan didn't move. Then one of the pods, still unopened, exploded from within. The replica of Ryan emerged. Eyes black, movements twitching, as if something inside wore skin like a costume. The real Ryan staggered back. That's not, he started, but then the lights failed entirely. In the dark, a voice not belonging to anyone filled the chamber. The fracture begins. Lyra drew her blade, and the war started again. The darkness was total, broken only by the pulse of emergency lighting, as it flickered to life in blood-red flashes. Alarms blared, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat struggling to stay alive. Lyra could hear her team moving. Quick breaths, the unsheathing of weapons, boots scraping against the smooth metal floor. But she couldn't see them, not clearly. The chamber was no longer just the ship's atrium. Something had shifted. The walls pulsed faintly as though alive. She caught the glint of Kelren's eyes as he pressed his back to a support beam. His voice was a whisper. What was that thing? Not Ryan, Vren answered, voice flat, gun drawn. Not anymore. From across the room, the replica Ryan turned its head in a jerking, insect-like motion. The thing inside him wasn't trying to mimic humanity anymore. Its limbs twitched wrong. Its mouth moved too late for the words it spoke. I walked in darkness, it said. I became what waited. Thale stepped forward, one hand glowing faintly with stored energy, her visor reflecting the shifting patterns on the walls. You are not of this place. You have no name in our language. That is your weakness. The creature's head twitched toward her. Then give me one. Lyra didn't wait. She surged forward, blade slicing a line of pale fire across the creature's chest. It didn't bleed, just split, revealing a latticework of shimmering dark matter and something that hissed like steam when exposed. It retaliated fast, faster than thought, backhanding her with a force that threw her across the chamber. She struck the wall with a crunch and dropped hard, vision swimming. Kelren shouted her name, but Vren was already firing, blasts of plasma lighting the room in strobing bursts. The creature dodged some, absorbed others. The hull beneath it groaned, metal warping under its presence. We can't kill it here, Thale said, dragging Lyra to her feet. This place is too unstable. If it ruptures the ship's core, then we drag it out. Lyra coughed, blood in her mouth, forced it to follow. Kelren activated a control node on his wrist. I can reroute bulkhead seals. Channel it into the forward hangar. It's closer to the surface. If we eject it into space, it might destabilize. The creature's head snapped toward him, hearing every word. It moved with sudden speed, blurring to the shadows, but Kelren had already triggered the doors. A cascade of force fields slammed down behind the monster, locking it in a narrowing corridor. Move! Lyra barked. They ran. No time to think, only the instinct to survive and finish what had started. The corridors shifted, reshaped themselves under Ryan's old neural architecture. The ship still remembered her. Doors opened before her and slammed shut behind the others. What's the plan once it's in the hangar? Vren asked between breaths. Explosive decompression, Kelren said. We vent the bay and jettison the bastard into the void. And pray that whatever's inside can't fly, Thale added grimly. They burst into the hangar, vast, cathedral-like, filled with dust-coated fighters and dormant drones. The stars beyond the force field blinked, watching. Lyra turned. Seal the entry. Kelren nodded, locking the final barrier as the creature hurled itself into view. Its form had shifted again, longer, spine arched, shadows bleeding from it in tendrils. The air warped around it, reality bending as if rejecting its presence. Thale raised both arms. Glyphs lit up across her skin, ancient runes humming with focused energy. Hold it in the bay long enough for me to contain it. I can weaken its form, break the bridge between what it was and what it wants to become. Lyra and Vren flanked the entry. As the creature lunged forward, Lyra met it mid-stride, striking with speed born of desperation. Her blade glanced off its shoulder, and Vren fired a plasma bolt into its chest. It shrieked, a sound like breaking stone and torn flesh, and staggered just enough. Thale's voice rose into a chant. The glyphs pulsed, brighter now, and the shadows recoiled as though burned. "This is your edge, creature," she said, eyes blazing. "This is where your reflection ends." The creature roared and lunged, but this time it didn't reach them. A field snapped into place midair, catching it mid-leap and slamming it to the floor. Kelrin was at the terminal, hands flying across the interface, opening exterior bay doors in 3, 2. The hull split open, the force field holding back the void shattered, and everything was pulled toward the stars. Lyra gripped the emergency railing. The creature howled as the vacuum dragged it backward. It clawed at the floor, at the walls, at the very fabric of the ship. But Thale's glyphs held, binding it like chains forged from memory and belief. And then it was gone, torn from the hangar and swallowed by the stars. The silence returned, thick and echoing. Lyra exhaled. "Seal it." Kelrin closed the doors. Artificial gravity re-engaged. The ship groaned back to life, as though waking from a nightmare. They stood in the hangar, the echo of what just happened settling over them like dust. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Thale turned to Lyra. "That wasn't the end." "No," Lyra said quietly. "It was the opening move." Kelrin glanced at the control panel. "We still have the replicas." Vren holstered his weapon. "And we still don't know what brought it through the rift." Lyra looked toward the stars where the thing had vanished. Her hand trembled at her side, but her voice was steady. "Then we find out," she said, "and we stop it before it finds the rest of us." The aftermath carried a strange quiet, like the space between thunderclaps, full of tension, anticipation, and the certainty that more was coming. Lyra moved slowly through the ship's corridors, each step echoing in the wounded silence. The crew worked in hushed tones, repairing damaged systems, rerouting power, and sealing off entire sections warped by the presence of the Riftborn. That was the name Thale had given it, one pulled from the old text she rarely quoted aloud. Kelrin hunched over a console in the central NAV hub, eyes bloodshot but focused. Streams of data spilled across the hollow display. Energy signatures, displacement patterns, anomalies traced back through the void. He didn't look up when she entered. "Still chasing shadows?" Lyra asked. He blinked slowly, as if surfacing from a dream. "Not shadows. A signal." It left a trail. Lyra stepped closer. "From the rift?" He nodded. "Yes, but it's not linear. It loops, pulses like a heartbeat or a beacon. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't just crossing dimensions. It was answering something. A call." She felt it again then, that creeping chill under the skin, as if the space around them were listening. "So it's not the only one." "No," Kelrin said, and I think Ryan knew that. She stared at the looping waveform, its peaks and valleys like the teeth of some buried beast. "We need answers, not fragments." "We need the replicas," Kelrin said. "They're still dormant. But if we isolate one, interface carefully, we might extract memory constructs. Artificial minds store data differently than ours. Cleaner, more direct. You think they remember what Ryan didn't tell us?" "I think they were made because of what he couldn't." Lyra turned away, unease coiling in her stomach. Across the room, the lights flickered again, not like before, not with malice, but uncertainty. The ship was still adjusting, adapting. Maybe they all were. Thale entered a moment later, her robe dusted with scorched ash from the containment ward she dismantled. Her voice was quiet. "The hold is secure. Whatever echoes remain from the Riftborn, they're sealed. For now, Lyra nodded. Kelrin's found something. Thale studied the waveform, her eyes narrowing. This rhythm, I've seen it, not in a machine. In scripture. Kelrin scoffed gently, not unkindly. Scripture and science finally shaking hands. Thale didn't smile. There are patterns the universe repeats. Math calls them sequences. Faith calls them omens. Lyra exhaled, the fatigue catching up to her bones. Then let's give both a voice. They moved together down to the stasis chamber, where the replicas waited. The pod still hummed with low energy, life suspended in artificial peace. Lyra stood before her own double. Same face, same scars, yet untouched by the burden of the last few weeks. It was unsettling to look at oneself and feel obsolete. Vren joined them, his presence as solid as always, though something in his eyes had shifted. "You sure about this?" he asked. "We let them wake. We might not be able to control what they remember." "We don't need control," Lyra said. "We need truth." Kelrin moved to the console. "One replica. Just one. If it goes wrong, we purge the process." Thale placed a charm near the base of the pod, muttering a protective phrase. Vren simply raised his weapon slightly, finger resting near the trigger. "Begin," Lyra said. The pod hissed open. Vapor spilled onto the floor. The replica's eyes snapped open, bright, unblinking, devoid of confusion. It looked around, taking in the faces, the weapons, the tension. "You are not my reflection," it said to Lyra. "No," she replied. "You're a contingency. I want to know why." The replica sat up, moving with unnatural grace. "Because the fracture is not a singular event. It is a cycle. Ryan saw the beginning, but not the end." "Tell us what he didn't," Kelrin said. The replica tilted its head. "You call it a rift, but it is not a tear. It is a mouth, and it has been open far longer than your people have existed." Thale's breath caught. Then what passed through wasn't the first. "It was the scout," the replica said. "The harbinger. And it learned from you. It learned you." Lyra leaned closer. "What does it want?" "To replace you," the replica said. "Not because you are weak, but because you are unpredictable. You deviate. You hope. That is dangerous." Kelrin glanced at Lyra. "That's why the simulations failed. We made choices they couldn't predict." "Exactly," the replica said. "And that's why you still have a chance. But not for long." Suddenly, the lights dimmed, not flickered, dimmed, as if the entire ship exhaled. A voice echoed through the comms, not from the ship's systems, but somewhere deeper. "You've seen behind the veil. Now it sees you." The replica looked up, face suddenly fearful. "It wasn't watching me. It was waiting for you." Lyra drew her weapon, but there was nothing to aim at. The signal returned to the waveform on the bridge. Stronger now. Sharper. "They're coming," Thale said, voice hushed. "Not from outside. From inside time itself." Lyra stared at the dark beyond the viewports, where stars blinked and distances folded. "Then we hold the line," she said, "or we become the thing we fear." The replica nodded once, not as a machine, but something closer kin. Then listened carefully. It said, "Because there's something else you need to know.